Thank you for the introduction. Thanks for having us. I think Mary Frances is going to start us off.
First of all, I want to apologize for having my camera off. This isn't intentional, but Zoom was being a bit of a beast, and so I'm having to come in through a browser, and it was hitching. And that I would prefer to see you, you would prefer to see me, but I apologize in advance. So the first thing happened was I've put in the chat the link to the library guide for extension students. We're going to be working from that page. So I'm going to share my screen and this one. What you should see is, a white page, blue band at the top, library guide for Harvard Extension students. Before I jump into showing you all the things, I'd first like to encourage you to ask for help. Whenever you get stuck, Jonathan and I, well, we work normal hours, but we pick up email all the time. Actually, that's a good point. I'm just going to drop my email in the chat. But on this page, there is contact information for us on the home screen. My face, Jonathan's, just have to click the link. As you're searching for things, whether you're using Hollis, there's a chat feature. There is also a way to get help from, let me see if I can come up with the research help page, the Ask a Librarian, right? You can just drop a question in. There's FAQs, you can chat with librarians, you can send us an email, and you can make an appointment to meet with us. So never fear, help is nearby. Chat is staffed until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night Eastern, so you should be able to get help most days of the week when you're doing your research. All right. There are specific librarians in various subject fields. So for the English department, there is a librarian with a PhD in English. So if your question is very deep or involved, Jonathan and I may refer you to another librarian, but we'd usually always send an email in advance so they know that to expect you and what your question is. At this point, Jonathan's going to talk to you about library access and other cool things.
Yes, so right. So speaking of questions, we do get a lot of questions on library access. So I think I will share my screen as well. And I will also use the same guide. So the same link that was shared in the chat, the library guide for Harvard Extension School. We have a library access section on this page, just on the left menu. So the easiest way to pass this along is that all students have access to everything that's Harvard Library online. So that's whether or not you're just taking one course and that's all you ever take, or if you are going to pursue a degree and you're not yet enrolled, or if you are a degree candidate and you're officially admitted, all of you have access to Harvard Library online. So it's through Harvard Key, which you may be familiar with, the same way you would log into a Canvas course. Harvard Key is what Harvard Library uses to get authentication to our online resources. So that's the easiest thing to pass along. That's why it's the first bullet point up here, just that everybody has access to online. The only thing to clarify about the online access is that if you are a degree candidate, and that's what this point here makes, degree candidates have a Harvard ID, which is a little bit different for online access because you will have access in between semesters. So in between fall and spring, in the summer, in between spring and fall, as long as you're in the program and an admitted degree candidate, you have online access throughout. If you are a course taker, the online access is from the first day of the semester to the last day of the semester. So not the first day of class, last day of class, it's whatever on the academic calendar shows like first day of classes, end of the semester. You'll have online access, but unfortunately it does turn off after that. So that's online. In person, is a little bit different. So if you are a degree candidate and you have a Harvard ID, you have access to all of the libraries. You can borrow materials, check things out. But if you are a course taker and you're not officially admitted with a Harvard ID, it doesn't mean you can't use the libraries. So if you're local and you live in the area, or if you're just going to be on campus for like an active learning weekend, you could take advantage of what's called a class participant card, which is mentioned here. And that would allow you to have access to the libraries if you just want to visit them, or if you want to check things out. The only catch is that there are some COVID guidelines, and I won't go into that because it's a little bit of a rabbit hole with a whole bunch of bullet points on these links, but I can just refer you to that if that's something that you want to look into. This will give all the steps for getting a class participant card. So that's for in-person access, but I think you'll find online, if all of this is new to you, the online access is pretty amazing. So we're going to go into Hollis in a moment, but just to give you a sense of it, like if you went into Hollis and typed in leadership, which is not a good search, there's 4.6 million results and 2.9 million of those are online. So there's no shortage of online access. We're going to go over a databases page, which will be mentioned a little bit later, and these are all online, and there's like thousands of databases for online research. So more than likely, online is going to satisfy your research needs. Okay, so speaking of Hollis, I think that's where I will hand this back to Mary Frances.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, I was in the chat answering a question. I know we're going to take questions at the end, but that one was interesting because I hadn't heard of the resource somebody was asking about, so I had to do a quick search to find it. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go back to the Library Guide for Extension students. And one of the tools, the most common tool people use to search for articles is Hollis. Hollis is the library catalog. I'm going to open this in a separate window. And this is a brief description of it. It will search for catalog and articles when, as the default, you can choose to search for just an author or just a title, and I'll show you how to do that. A little bit of a decision tree on how to make it work, and information about keyword searching. Jonathan said that that was a terrible search, and I'm about to show you even more terrible searches, because it's helpful to see how you can take just words and turn them into a useful query. All right, so here we go to Hollis. Oh, I did want to point out, there's a section here called 1-minute videos. These cover in a minute, because Jonathan timed them, what is Hollis? How you find online results, how you develop search words using search operators, chatting with a librarian, tips and hints for getting the most out of your time with Hollis. This is Hollis, and I am going to put a link to this in the chat because, there are never too many links. It says my name in the upper right, so I've signed in. And that's the first thing you should look for. If it doesn't, it will say sign in here and sign in there. And that's really important because you won't be able to get to articles if you don't. Okay. Let's think about, okay. If you were looking for a specific book, you could do a couple of things. You can use double quotation, say, find me this, precisely this, and it will turn that book up. Something to notice, what's interesting about this book is there's no link to online access. This is a book that only exists physically in Harvard's collection. If you really wanted it and you're not in the Cambridge area, you can click on the title. You can see information about it. It gives you the table of contents, a brief summary. If you know you only need, say, 1 or 2 chapters from it, you could click on Scan and Deliver. What will happen is a new window will open with the information about the book filled in. You can say which chapter you need or what pages and submit it, and you would get a PDF. You cannot scan more than 2 chapters really of a book that is under copyright. So if you need the book and you are in the Cambridge area, you could certainly come to the stacks. If it were checked out, which it's not, you could click on Interlibrary Loan and request the book from another library. What do you do if you're not in the Cambridge area and you need the book? If you are in the US, then I recommend checking with your local public library to see if they have that interlibrary loan service. And if they do, they will get it for you from the closest, least expensive source. If you have any questions about this, just email Jonathan or I, and we can help you walk through that process. Mostly, though, we're going to be searching generally for a topic. So let's say I was looking for something about environment, right? Oh, goodness me. You wanted to know about the environment, but you're going to get 18 million results, which is just too much. So maybe you rethink and you think, well, maybe it's sustainability. And you're still going to get 7 million results. Hollis has a lot. It's not just the books Harvard owns, it's articles in not all of the article databases we have, but most of them and most of the articles in them. So that's going to be too much. So what you might be more interested in is sustainability and justice. You'll notice that the and is in all caps. That tells the computer, I want only records where both of these things are true. If you used an or, it would be either word. So and is exclusive and or is inclusive. You can even use not, but we'll stick with this for now. So now you're down to, just under 500,000 results, which is still too many. What you might choose to do is apply limits to your search. So maybe you only want to see the last 10 years. You look for the filters on the far right, you see date, you enter the date, and you click apply. That didn't knock off quite as many as one might hope. Maybe you're just looking for peer-reviewed articles. That's better. Still a lot, but better. So maybe you want to be more specific in your search. In this case, what I would do right now is I would click Remember All Filters. That way I can change the search and I don't have to keep re-entering those terms. You could also add online. Notice that would knock out 8,000, which is interesting. By that filter, block that filter, and we're good to go. Generally speaking, when you're searching Hollis, it helps to approach it knowing what you're looking for. So sustainability and justice and urban renewal, if you wanted to try a 2-word phrase, that's going to limit it even more. Urban sustainability in the US cities. In the US, cities take action. When you get results, you have a couple of options generally. You can click on the title or you can click on online access. I tend to click on the title because I want to read this. I want to read the summary. I want to know what's in it. Summary in the table of contents, because this is a book that is available online and you can click and see the contents. That's information about it. That's the URI. It's Bloomsbury Academic. Okay, and there's the download link in the PDF viewer. Very small under the book. Sometimes you have to look around because no, they do not make it easy to find things. Articles look similar. And if you're wondering why I'm getting books in when I said peer-reviewed articles, yeah, I don't understand that either because that should have been eliminated. So it's fascinating to me what went wrong in these things. Good. Articles. For these, you often see two things, online access or view PDF. If you click on the view PDF, you get this little, goes through this key app and it says, do you know, blah, blah, blah. So this is the article itself. You can choose to download it from here. You've read the abstract, you know you like it. Check the bibliography, all the information is here. So you can go ahead and download it from here if that's what you want to do. So that's a basic introduction to HOLIS. Now, if you were stuck and you had questions and you weren't sure what you were looking for, that's where the chat with a librarian right here on the right can help you. You put in your name, your email address, your affiliation, because that does help us, you know, if you're an alumni, there may be different answers. If you're an extension school student, if you need an appointment, they'll just funnel you to Jonathan or I. So it's very useful to have this here. Just ask. If it's red, nobody's there, but mostly there's somebody there. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Jonathan, I think, is going to cover, now that you've found things, what do you do with them?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, because as you can imagine, watching Mary Frances do that, you're changing your search, you're adjusting it, so it can get messy very quickly. So the need to organize your research becomes pretty important because it's all of a sudden it's very quick where you realize you lost some article that you thought was really good. You don't remember where you found it, and you maybe have 15 tabs open, and it just becomes kind of messy because that's part of the research process. It is messy. You have to look in various places. You have to change your search. You have to revise it. There's no like perfect way to do a search where you get 30 results and you find the 10 articles that you need for your paper. It just doesn't happen like that, unfortunately. There'll be thousands of results and you look through the first 20 or so and maybe you find one, and then you have to go to another resource and you find things there. So for organizing, it can be somewhat of a personal preference. Like Mary Frances showed like a PDF of the article coming up, and maybe you like to download PDFs and save them to your desktop and have a folder on your desktop. So it is kind of a personal preference, but there are some things you may or may not know about that I can pass along. So let me share my screen, and so I'll just start with HOLIS as well. So one thing you can do, as Mary Frances mentioned, signing in to HOLIS, which is really important. Another reason is because of this, my favorites, the pin icon. So you could, if you find you're doing a lot of your research in HOLIS, because this suggestion is unique to HOLIS, you could save things from here. So say you're doing some research. I'm just going to do a very quick search just for time purposes, international relations and policy. So when you find things that you like in HOLIS, what you can do is use the pin. So this would maybe be a little confusing. These are journals because that wasn't a very good search. So let's do some of the things Mary Frances mentioned. Let's go peer-reviewed articles, and we'll go with online sources. And just to reiterate some of this, then we'll also look at date, 2015. So now you have kind of a more manageable set of results. You start looking through them. I would probably recommend not just opening up PDFs and reading, because that's obviously going to waste some of your time. You're trying to save time. A good process, I think, is, you look through the titles, you can tell some work, you can tell some don't. And so when you find one that does seem relevant to what you're looking for, click on the title, and then you get to sort of look at the summary. You can look at some of the subject headings that might give you ideas of search words that you weren't using. And then you could pin this. If this article looked really good, you just click on the pin and make it a saved item. And you can kind of see there's a momentary graphic that lets you know that it worked. And you can see the pin has a line through it, which also changes it. And yeah, so that's one way. So you start saving these to your favorites in Hollis. And when you go there, the next step though is you have to somewhat organize it, because they're just going to end up in a list of things without labels. So you can see, I think I've been teaching lately, so I have a whole bunch of things without labels because I just did this as an example. So it can get kind of messy. So it's probably a good practice to, like, in the moment after you've sent a few in there, like I know I just used this one for international relations and this one. So I select the two that I just found that I liked, and then I can go up here and add a label. And I'll just say, add a new label, and this will be my international relations paper. So now those two, you can see the graphic changes. They now have a tag. And then next time I come into Hollis, so say like the next day, I can just go to my favorites up on the top because I'm signed in. Look over here on the right on my labels, and I go to my international relations paper, and I have the two sources I found the day before. So that's one way. Especially if you're using Hollis a lot, then you can be pretty organized because you save things and you create labels. But as I'm going to show you in a minute as well, in a few minutes, there's a lot of databases that you might want for specific subject areas. So you may be using Hollis in addition to, like, a psychology database. And if that's the case, then this Hollis idea doesn't work as well. So what you could use, and we have, so I'm just going to go back to our library guide for Harvard Extension School. And I believe we have this under research help page on the left. We have a recommendation for using sources. And the second one here is our citation tools FAQ for help with organizing your sources and producing bibliographies. And we have a guide on Zotero, and that would probably be my recommendation, especially if you're using more than Hollis, which most likely you will be. And if you're working towards a thesis, I would say this is a definite, not even like a question. I think you would want to use Zotero to organize your sources. And the reason, as is mentioned on this Zotero guide, if you haven't heard of it, the reason to use it is it helps you be organized, save time, collaborate, and it's free. So it does a few things. So one, it's going to help you save what you found. That alone is helpful. The second reason is because it will actually help you with your citations. So both as you're writing your paper, like your in-text citation, as well as your list of works cited, your bibliography, it will help you format that in whatever format you have to use for your course. So for those two reasons alone, it's really helpful. And we have a lot of guidance on it. So if it seems kind of abstract and confusing, I promise if you just put in a little time up front and learn how to use it, because you don't have to do, you don't have to do everything. So on this guide, there's a lot of things about annotating, taking notes, sharing and collaborating, different ways to organize. You don't necessarily have to go in depth with Zotero. Like, you could use the very basic, you're in Hollis or you're in a database, you save a few articles, they're in your Zotero. And then when you go to write your paper, you use the Zotero built into Microsoft Word, and then you have a lot of help formatting your citations. And that's all you have to do with it. So you can use it in a very basic way. And there's a ton of guidance here. So I won't go through all of it because this is more just a referral for you to look at after today. There's everything from downloading and installing it. And it's really, I think it's really helpful. I mean, there's troubleshooting issues, there's recommended setup suggestions, there's even some recommended tweaks to make Zotero work a little bit better. So there's a real, like, step-by-step guidance. And the same goes for adding sources to Zotero. We have a lot of help. So adding books from Hollis, adding journal articles, adding web pages. There's screenshots that kind of show you what it will look like. And I was going to go into Zotero, but I think just for time purposes, so we can answer questions, this screenshot probably gets the point across. So it sort of looks like this. You do a browser extension. So the actual practice of using Zotero looks like this. Like you find this source that works really well for you. You're in your browser and you've added a Zotero extension connector, which is described in the installation steps on how to do that. And all you have to do is you just click that button and then you send it to a folder that you've created in Zotero. You can create subfolders. You can have as many folders as you want, organize things the way you want to. And by clicking that button, when you're looking at the source, it adds that specific source to your Zotero folder. So we even have, I think there's a video a little bit further down. So if you want more than a screenshot, we have a video that shows you how to do it. We have a video on using journal articles in the databases that I'm going to show you in just a minute, as promised. And it's the same idea. You're using that extension, clicking on it, and it adds the source that you found that you want to save to your Zotero folder. And there's a video for that as well. So a lot of guidance. And the reason it's helpful is because you're more than likely you're going to be searching in multiple places, like a website, a database, Hollis, and Zotero will save all of that. So yeah, definitely very helpful, can definitely save you a lot of time, and there's a lot of support. I guess the last thing I should mention, sorry if I'm making you dizzy scrolling, I just want to mention that there's classes. So if you click on the classes and community, you can see that there's some Zotero classes, and if both in person or online, and you can see there's still a lot coming up. There's several in person in September, October, November, and online. And these are just, this isn't like a course, this is just a 1-hour workshop. And online, there's some in September, October, and I think, yes, one in November. So lots of support for you to learn how to use it. And yeah, I think that's it. I'll leave it there. And for as far as organizing. So as I mentioned, there's probably going to be more than Hollis that you use. And there is a reference to this going back to our library guide that we keep sharing. There's a research help page, and there's some best resources suggested here. So the first, Hollis, which is because, as you probably saw, it's very powerful. It's searching a ton of sources, which can be good. It can be interdisciplinary. A lot of your topics, might not specifically be like a international relations topic. It could go a little bit into business, maybe education, maybe there's some environmental aspect. And Hollis is good at bringing in journals from all those different areas. But sometimes, for example, say you're in a psychology course and your professor wants you to conduct psychology research, it's a bit easier if you go to some of our databases. So we have a link here. I'll go back to the research guides just so you don't think I'm skipping that. And this is where you could search for a specific database. So let's say I know, all right, I want, and this isn't searching for sources, this is searching for databases, which if that term is new to you, essentially it's just a collection of sources. It might be a collection of images, it might be a collection of newspaper articles, journal articles, it might be a collection of all of that. They're subscription-based, and Harvard Library pays for yearly subscriptions to them. And they all have interfaces that are somewhat similar, where you search within specific ones. So let's say I'm doing a psychology paper and I'm not sure what database to use. I heard that there's databases. I could just type in psychology and you get We Suggest. So these are Harvard Library suggestions. And these are good because PsycInfo is indeed the best one. If you were to ask Mary Frances or me which one you should use, that's what we would say. A psychology professor would say the same thing. So these are good suggestions. So PsycInfo is what you would want to use to only search psychology journals. And the reason this is helpful is because it's a smaller collection. You're not going to get billions of results like you would in Hollis. So it's really helpful to have that sort of focused research. And just to make one, while you're all here, just to kind of catch a common point of confusion, some students see this EBSCOhost and they think like, oh, I've already searched here. This is just like a software interface. It's just the way to search. what you're actually searching, like the collection of articles, is mentioned here. So in this case, it is PsycInfo. You could go to an education database that would look exactly the same, except it would say searching like the education database. So the search results that come up will be completely different. EBSCO is just like the software to search the interface. So the database page is a good way to do this. It can be overwhelming though. Like for example, let's say I type in business. There are 158 databases that come up. Now, obviously that's kind of overwhelming. And even in this case, we suggest there's so many areas of business that, maybe Factiva is not what you want. So this page doesn't always work. I mean, there are some ways you can work with it. If you go over to the best bets, you could do best for business and management and just sort of get the top 9, or best for economics. And that will be similar to other things too. If I put in education, it will sort of do the best, the top 10 rather than all 150. So I do think the databases page is really helpful. But what could be better are what is also here in the best resources, and that's the research guides. So these are created by Harvard librarians. Mary Frances and I have created a whole bunch for Harvard Extension School. For example, we've created a research guide for pretty much every pro seminar. And this is a little more helpful because you're not going to get a list of 100 databases. We're going to give you a much more focused list. So for example, let's just go to anthropology and psychology. And it looks very similar as to like our main Harvard Extension guide because they're all considered research guides. And so there's everything from like background information, for reference sources, if that's familiar to you, where rather than looking for research articles, you just want like some background and some context to the bigger, broader topic. So we recommend background reference sources, and we recommend subject databases. So for example, instead of going to the databases page, typing in anthropology, 100 databases come up. This just gives you like a top 4. So it's pretty focused and provides a little bit of an explanation of what you'll find in these databases. So I think the research guides are really helpful in that sense. It's just a little bit more focused in the recommendations that we offer. And in the business example, if I go to browse all Harvard Extension School research guides, since a lot of students are in business courses, I should probably mention this, we have a business research guide for extension students, and it's very similar. So it's not so generic, just business as a big term. It might be, that you need company data, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's industry, and we have database recommendations for those specific areas. So if you need like an industry report, IBIS World is a really good one. So that is how you can find out about these databases. Since we have so many, the research guides are a good way to go about that. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say on this. So yeah, I think Mary Frances, unless there's things I left out, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we could do a Q&A.
No, I think you've covered everything. I've been keeping an eye on chat and answering questions that come up there. So the most recent one from Michael Young was about how to get access to a newspaper like the New York Times from the portal. So there's a couple of ways to answer that question, Michael. The first is that if you're looking for articles, there are newspaper specific databases. And the one I want to mention is Nexus Uni in this case. You could look at Factiva, but honestly, I hate searching Factiva because it's so awkward. If you are looking for a subscription to the New York Times, that's a separate thing. So let me, where did right. I did find it after all, so I'm going to do a quick screen share. And that is here. So The Harvard Library does have a page on things like the New York Times and getting your free access to the account, um, how to deal with problems. There's also the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and there is um, another page to take a look at. It's a guide from the Kennedy School that mentions things that are mostly available to all students, including extension students, called News and Media Studies. And so you can get your New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Cook Political Report, which is awkward because it only updates on Thursdays, whatever, Bloomberg.com, Financial Times, not Stat. This is only for a couple of places and other things as well. So you know what? Let me drop that in the chat for everyone so you can take a look at that and see if those are things that you want. Does that help?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate your
You're
help.
very welcome. Stop
So yeah,
sharing.
oh, thanks. So yeah, we could definitely open it up to any questions. If you want, just jump on your microphone, or you can ask in the chat.
Actually, I do have one. Um, I know that the US PDO, the patent office, they have their own website for us to search for patents. Um, what about Hollis? Do we have some good resources that we can look for information besides that website that we can look for information on patents? Do you recommend any?
I have a vague recollection that there's I don't do much patent research, but I do sort of vaguely remember referring to one of those research guides that a librarian created for patents. But Mary Frances, I don't know if you have a clearer answer.
I am checking now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a
Because
patent guide. And I could, while Mary Frances is looking, I mean, I could just mention something quickly. I'll share my screen again. Because I didn't, on the research guides, I didn't mention, let me go back to the main page. So when you're looking at the research guides, I showed like the Harvard Extension ones, but on that research help page, there's a link just to the general research guides. This can be a good place too to just search all of the guides for really anything, and you can sort of see if a librarian has mentioned something that you're looking for, like patents. And I don't, maybe this is what you already found, Mary Frances.
well, there is a guide. It's from the Harvard Law School. That's a different one than the one I found, and that is actually really interesting for CS students. Cool. I would give that one a try too, just because it looks interesting. The one I found is from the law school, and it mentions a lot of legal texts, which are not necessarily as useful as information about the USPTO from their page, but it does talk about patent public search, how to use the Google effectively, that kind of thing. The Google, oh my goodness, I just turned into my mother. How to use Google Patents, which is patent.google.com, more effectively a little bit, might help you. Else, yeah, those are the two I would go for, Michael.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, anyone else? While you're thinking over a question, I'll just quickly mention, because we did not show, I just realized it, we didn't show scan, or I don't think, we didn't show scan and deliver or interlibrary loan, but I think I can just kind of quickly mention it because it's something you'll come across when you're doing your research. So let's say you're in Hollis or you're in a database and an article comes up, but it's just like the information about an article, and Harvard Library doesn't actually have access to it. Don't ever pay for an article. Harvard Library can get you access to information that Harvard Library doesn't even have. So you find some article, there's just like the citation and a little abstract. Don't end up on a publisher page where it's telling you to pay for the article. Just use scan and deliver, and usually that will happen in the process of doing your research. So if there's ever an article we don't have, our system kind of automatically puts the scan and deliver link. So just pay attention to that scan and deliver interlibrary loan link. And that is a way you can request us to scan an article that we don't have. It's for free, and it would take about like 1 to 4 days. A lot of students, I think, have reported that they do that and they get the article the same day. But just to be safe, just keep in mind it could be like 1 to 4. And the same applies for scans of things we do have, but only in print. So the most common example would be a book chapter. So you find a book that's in the library that we don't have an ebook of, but you don't need the whole book. Often you just need like 1 or 2 chapters. And thankfully, with copyright, you can get a scan of up to 2 chapters sent to you electronically, and it can be a scan of a book that we have in the library, or likewise a book that we don't have at all, and you just need a chapter or 2. You can use that. And a lot of times it's similar. You'll be in Hollis and a record will come up for that book or that book chapter, and there'll be a scan and deliver interlibrary loan link that you click on, and it brings up the form for you to request it.
The only addition I would make to that is that if you are using Google or Google Scholar and you see articles, there is a way to use the Harvard Library's essentially sign-in process to make that go more smoothly. And it will tell you to try Harvard, give you a little link to try Harvard Library. Let me get that page.
While you're doing that, just in the chat, Marina asked how to request the chapter download, and if you would mind sharing your screen and showing how to do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can do that real quick. I'll throw my screen up here. Yeah, absolutely. The trick is there's so much that Harvard has access to that I should have these like prepared. Actually, I think I do have one prepared. It can sometimes be hard to find something we don't have access to online. I have to like actually have it prepared. Okay, here we go. I do have one. So this, I think, is a book that's only available in print. So it's in Widener Library. So say this intercultural memories book had a chapter that you wanted. You would be clicking on this for more information. And sometimes it will give you the chapters in here. Other times if it doesn't, so like this one shows all the chapters. If for any reason Hollis didn't, you could just go to Amazon or Google Books and just try to find like the table of contents. But let's say like I knew that I just wanted chapter 6. And if that's all I needed, I would just scroll down a little bit to the access options. And this is what I was saying, that there's a scan and deliver interlibrary loan link. And it's really the same form. I don't want you to get too confused about the difference. The little description in parentheses sort of helps. But so in this case, it's scan and deliver because you want a book chapter. So you would click on this. And if you've never used it, it's going to bring up a registration form. That's just the first time only. So I've already registered, so I get the actual form for the book chapter request. And what's nice is that everything's kind of copied and pasted. The only thing, I just have to put in a few other things. I would copy and paste that chapter 6, the title of chapter 6 that I wanted. I would put that in so they know which one I want scanned. Otherwise, most of the information is here. There's a not wanted after date. But again, it's usually 1 to 4 days. So you don't have to worry about this taking like 2 weeks. It should be 1 to 4 days. And then you submit the form. Yeah, so that's how that would work. And it would be the same, just substitute an article that doesn't have a online, that doesn't have like an online access button. It would be the same process for an article. It would look very similar. There'd be no online link. You'd click on it and then you get to that scan and deliver.
Jonathan, I have a question. When you do scan and deliver, does it come then, like, do you get an email with a PDF, or how do you access the scanned information?
Yeah, exactly. So you will receive an email once it's available, and then it will be a PDF. It will ultimately lead you to a PDF that you can then, just like download to your computer. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to circle back around to that Google Scholar thing. Let me share my screen. Yep. So let's say HESA, I think Jonathan showed that you go to HESA, you click on databases at the top. At the top under top picks, you'll see a link to Google Scholar. If you walk through Harvard's path, what will happen is it will be aware of Harvard subscriptions. You want to check your settings to make sure your library links are set to try Harvard Library. But once you've done that, yeah, we're going to save that because that's just fine. If you were looking for an article, you could put the title, or a book, you could put the title or in here, and you'll see how it populates with Try Harvard Library. You click the link, because your little intermediary screen is it's thinking really hard about it. And you wait a minute. And then it will hand it to you if it's available, and you can view the PDF. You can view the EPUB, you can just read the full article right there, okay? So please don't purchase anything unless you've run down all of these options. I believe I can put the link to how to set up your Google Scholar in the chat, so you can set that up so that it runs every time you go to, HESA databases, Google Scholar, boom, and you should be all set with that.
So any other questions? Well, if anything, hopefully you realize that if you do have questions, that we're happy to help. That's what we're here for. We hear a lot of students say that they don't want to bother us, or they think it's a stupid question, and neither is true. The library is confusing. I get caught up on things all the time where things just aren't clear, and you have to kind of take a moment to figure it out. And we're here to help you, so you're certainly not bothering us. So absolutely feel free to reach out anytime.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Mary Frances. Really, really appreciate all of your time and you sharing these resources with us. I do desperately wish I had done this 2 years ago when I started the extension school, but better late than never for sure. Yeah, just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And for everyone, we will have a recording of this up on our YouTube channel, probably at some point tomorrow, depending on how busy I get today. And I'll include the various links that were shared as well in the description of that video. But yeah, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time today.
Of course. Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for attending, everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.